In this video, we're going to be going over the best deaths in Jurassic Park movies, or at least the ones that we deemed are the best of the bunch. We want to give a big shout out and thank you to AJ Mack, another one of our Patreon supporters. I don't think you guys understand how much your support really means to us. It makes us creating this content so much easier and motivational. And I know that sounds cliche, but it really does help. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Oh, the best deaths in Jurassic Park movies. These don't really go in a particular order, but we tried to save the one that we thought was the best for last. And it was based on us imagining being in that situation. So the first one is Shuta, when Muldoon was trying to help the worker be freed from the grasp of the big one's jaws or claws or whatever it was that was tearing this guy apart in the beginning of the Jurassic Park movie. The only reason this one made it on the list is because, let's face it, it's very iconic and everyone knows the scene. The second one is when Gennaro, the lawyer in the first Jurassic Park movie, got eaten by the T-Rex. It was so horrible because this guy ran away to hide here, and probably you would have done the same thing in this situation, to be as far away from this thing as hidden as possible, only to be exposed on the loo and be eaten on the toilet. It's one of the most pathetic ways that you could die. You could also feel the suspense and fear from this guy as he just realized that he was out in the open and the Tyrannosaurus Rex just happened to be sitting there or standing there right over him. It's like he can't move. And I can imagine being in that situation, because what are you going to do? Even if you run, this thing's going to run after you. And you're hoping that by not making any sudden movements, it'll just leave you alone. And then you come to that horrific realization as it's staring at you with its tasty lips smacking, you realize that you're gonna die in the rain, cold, on a toilet, outside. The next one is Dennis Nedry. This is one of the most horrible ways to die, and I don't think anyone really sat down to really wonder why. Not only is this guy blinded by a dinosaur that he got blindsided by because he didn't even know it was dangerous, and shame on him, because if you're working at a park, you're supposed to know which dinosaurs are dangerous. Just saying. But this guy is nearly blind. He feels as though he is safe in his car, of all places. Why would the thing wait in the car for him? We actually have a video on to why this happened. But then after he feels that overwhelming sense of relief, he hears the rattling noises. And remember, he can't really see well because whatever the Dilophosaurus spits in way of its venom tends to blind its prey, at least temporarily. So Dennis Nedry is sitting in his car feeling all relaxed that he's made it. Now remember, not only that, this guy is supposed to be a millionaire. All he had to do was get the embryos off the island, and he lost them. He could have had a great and comfortable life, and this happened to him. Now, a lot of you may be saying, well, it's his fault. He betrayed Hammond, and yes, you're right. He should not have done that. But we did another video on that as well, trying to see things from his side based on extra information that is given in the novels. Now, the best question to ask is, if you were in a situation like that where your employer didn't particularly treat you very nicely. He didn't treat you badly, but he didn't really treat you nicely either. And someone came to you and said that they would give you $5 million if you covertly take some of the embryos and give them to us. And then go back as if nothing happened. $5 million. We can imagine there would be a big lawsuit if Dennis Nedry did survive and Hammond found out that he did that. But hey, most of you, if you know you could get away with it for $5 million, you'd do it. So this look that Dennis Nedry gives the Dilophosaurus when he finds out that the thing is in the car with him, it's just really terrifying. And imagine being in close quarters with something. So you don't even have any time to react or get out. There's no open space for you to frail around, and Dennis Nedry's a big guy. So this must have been a horrible, helpless feeling that he had to go through when this Dilophosaurus was eating him alive. By the way, in the card, you guys should also check out the point of view theory that we did on the Dilophosaurus based on its perspective of what it might have been thinking during this whole ordeal. It's really interesting. It was one of my best point of view theory videos, stories to write. It was very fun, and it may give you some insight. Not particularly true, but it is interesting as a theory. Next is the clever girl scene. Now, this is one of the sad deaths because everyone loved Rob Muldoon, and for everything he knew about the raptors, it's amazing how he didn't realize that the other raptor was baiting him into completely ignoring his sides. Alan Grant was able to figure out that raptors hunt from the side, so maybe Muldoon wasn't thinking about it, maybe he was too narrow-minded, but he had the gun in hand and realized that he was outsmarted. Do you know how horrible it must feel to die at the jaws of something when you had your weapon in hand and you just couldn't use it fast enough? And as you're lying there, you know the weapon is in your hand as this thing is eating you, but you're unable to use it for whatever reason. Maybe it's just out of reach, or in this case, the gun is too long. You were outsmarted by the animal that you were supposed to be managing. That was a horrible death. The reason that this death is also very sad and very scary is because in this shot right here, where they're using the puppeteer or whatever it is, you can see that the animal is straddling Muldoon. So there's no way for him to get up or flail his legs around to get leverage. It is just straddling him. Her body is completely wrapped around Muldoon's body. There's no way for him to fight this thing as it rips his face to shreds. Let's move on to Jurassic Park: The Lost World, with the scene between the parent Tyrannosaurus Rexes tearing Eddie in half. And it's so ironic that the Benz is right there. It's like we're looking at a commercial, like the big Benz logo staring back at us. It's like, guy getting torn in half. Haha, buy a Benz. This was another scary, horrifying scene because just like Muldoon, Eddie had a weapon in hand that he could have used to defend himself, and it happened to be caught in the mesh. Not only that, but this guy died saving the rest of his crew's life. He knew he was in danger, and he could have pulled himself forward to try and get away from the Tyrannosaurus Rexes, and most people probably would have done that. They probably would have just put the car back in acceleration mode and be like, screw the trailer, drive forward, and then launch themselves out of the car. So the T-Rexes would end up following the car. That probably would have been the best way for Eddie Carr to survive. But even when he saw the jaws of the Tyrannosaurus Rexes staring back at him, this guy was still, with his foot on the gas, trying to save his friends. This was one of the most noble, actually, scratch that. This was the most noble death and sacrifice in the Jurassic Park movies. Everyone agrees unilaterally that Eddie was a stand-up guy and he did not deserve to die this way. Next up is the Buck versus the civilian guy. Now, this may seem like a very stupid death scene. Nobody really thinks about this one. But can you imagine how this must have felt for this guy? This guy who's never been around dinosaurs before? Not that people who have seen dinosaurs before wouldn't feel any less terrified if one was chasing them, but imagine that this is the farthest thing from your mind. At least the people on Isla Sorna knew they were surrounded by dinosaurs on the island, but this guy is probably out getting milk for his wife or going to visit his friends to go watch the game or something, and then lo and behold, this Godzilla-looking box face with teeth just starts terrorizing the city. So that's not the worst thing. This guy is running through the street and he decides, like I probably would, to break off from the pack, just immediately turning direction and going somewhere that you deem safe, like this video store or whatever the store is that he's trying to get into. And the T-Rex just stops dead bolt and is like, whoops, you're not getting away, and just turns at a perpendicular angle to go after this guy. And you can see the terror on his face, just knowing that he can make it if he could just open the door fast enough. And right before he's about to open the door, it's like that sanctuary, that salvation is right at your fingertips, literally in this case. And before he can even open the door, the thing gets him. Dude, he was right there. The door was open. He just had just a few seconds. And it was too late. And that wasn't even the worst part. Imagine you're pulled away from the door as you open it, and the T-Rex grabs you up in its mouth. You're still alive as this thing is carrying you away, and you know that this thing is going to eat you, and then you feel the pressure of its jaws slamming and squeezing you while its knife-like teeth pierce every bone in your body. Can you imagine how horrifying that would have been? It's not even an instant death. That's what makes it terrifying. It's not the deaths themselves, or the deaths themselves, it's the events leading up to the death. It's like vomiting. You know, when you're vomiting, if it's just an instant vomit, it's not so bad. You're like, oh, I feel better. But it's the 30 minutes to an hour of nausea that you feel before you have to vomit, and you gulping and gulping, trying to keep it down. You know you're going to vomit, but it's just prolonging the suffering. I felt so bad for that guy when I watched it. Peter Ludlow. This guy was a villain, but you could kind of understand his motives. He wasn't as shallow as they make other villains look in most of these movies. He actually did have a purpose for this, and he felt that he could probably have done a better job than his uncle did. People do that. So he had no idea the buck was around. He's trying to catch this baby. He's not scared of it. He's just like, okay, I gotta catch it back and do some damage control. And it's the way that the T-Rex is able to stealthily creep upon him. So when the baby finally runs past him and he looks back and he's like, I'm gonna get you, oh snap, there's Pop. What are you gonna do? And it's like, it was so wonderful the way that this actor portrayed the fear that the character must have felt, because as he was saying, wait, 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 that's something that you or I would probably say when something's about to kill us, even though you know the thing can't understand you. And he's pushing these boxes. It was so real, this scene, because it looks like what something in a real, or some human in a real life situation like this would do. You try to push objects over to distract the creature, knowing that the creature is bigger than you, but in your brain, if you try to put something between you and the creature, you can get away. You see people doing this in action movies all the time when they're being chased by someone. They'll find something like a box or a chair and just throw it behind them to try and trip up the thing that's chasing them. I used to do it with my dad all the time and throw stuff in the way so he could fall over, and that was hilarious. Just as a side note, when someone's chasing you, even if they're doing it for fun, you still feel the same level of terror. I don't know what that's about. Anyways, the worst part of this for Peter Ludlow is when the thing doesn't kill him but breaks his leg. Now, that's a lot of pounds of pressure we're talking about with the Tyrannosaurus Rex crunching down on your leg. He's still alive and unable to walk. He's completely maimed, and he doesn't know what's going to happen, so he's trying to crawl to get away, but his heart is beating really fast. His blood pressure is sky high, and he's in immense pain, and everything goes quiet. Then he turns around and sees the two dinosaurs looking at him, and he knows that he's gonna die. He knows. There's a difference between fighting for your life and running and having the ability to get away and something catches you, and being completely helpless while it's happening.
Wait.
Man, that actor did a really good job with portraying how freaking terrified he was. Someone's gonna stab you right now. You're like, wait, 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 wait. Like, do you really expect them to wait? But you're trying, because that's the only thing you can do. What are you gonna do? Blow fire in its face? Now onto the scene with the indoraptor and Ken Wheatley. It's not really that this is one of the scenes that I believe is one of the most scary, but I try to put myself in the minds of the people who are in these situations. And I don't really feel sorry for this guy because he put himself in this situation. The whole thing was just really ridiculously stupid. Yes, let's give him a little bit of leniency here that he didn't know what the indoraptor was, and he didn't know that by tranking it, it wouldn't work. And all of you obviously can see that the tranquilizers didn't work, because even after Ken Wheatley gave this thing tranks, the thing was running around like he was on cocaine the entire rest of the movie. So I don't know where this whole theory came from that he didn't win the fight in the end because he was tranked or sedated. That made no sense. But anyways, in the scene when Ken Wheatley stupidly stepped inside of the cage with his own volition, or to his own volition, and he was trapped with this thing, can you imagine how scary it must have been to think that the animal's tranquilized only to realize that it's not? This scene right here is just natural selection at work, to be honest, but it was still very terrifying as he's sitting there in pain, hoping that this thing won't kill him. He just lost his arm, and Ripper is just staring at him like, ha ha ha, let me smell your fear. Yes, I want to smell it. I want you to feel the fear, all of it, before I kill you. I'm gonna drink it all up. And then he just laces this guy. Now, just something we found really interesting, it's this video that we found by this YouTuber. We're gonna leave the link in the description, and he actually did the whole indoraptor scenes reversed, and it's really horrifying. Look at this clip from Capwing. About the whole reverse thing, but it looks more terrifying than the actual clip from the movie itself. Now, the next horrible death is the death of Nash in Jurassic Park 3. I felt so bad for this guy. He really sounds genuinely terrified. These guys should be paid handsomely for their performances, because you actually believe these guys are afraid. I've seen other actors that they scream or they behave as though they're fearful, but you know that they're acting, they're not serious. But you can feel in the way this guy is screaming that he's terrified. This was so scary, and you know this guy was scared to death because he was grabbing Tia Leone or Mrs. Kirby, not even caring that he would pull her to her death too. But when someone is desperate and afraid, they don't really care. They're gonna grab onto the closest thing to them. And the fact that he did that really drove it home that this guy was really terrified. And then to have this really huge animal waving you around in the air while you're between its teeth and then drop you, and you can hear its feet, you can hear its stomps getting closer as you try to lamely get away. This was very sad because he too seemed like a really nice guy. It's not that anyone particularly deserves to die if they're a schmuck, but you feel worse when it's someone that's really nice. This is the same case for Udesky. He's one of the sweetest people ever, and for him to have died like this was horrible. Not to mention, his death was extremely terrifying because he was paralyzed. He's laying there in the open with these things running around. They haven't killed him and he can probably feel everything, and he's unable to move. This is one of the funniest scenes, but it's on the list because this guy did a great job as well as performing as though he was really terrified. It's just that he's in the middle of making this speech, and then it was just so hilarious. But it was so heartfelt because you knew that he was terrified. And he's trying his best to calm down Delta so she doesn't attack. And for a moment there, you think that she's going to listen. You're hoping to God that she will listen. And then she just bites him, and like a delayed reaction, he's like, is this really happening? And then he just screams. It's just hilarious. Now, the one that makes the top of the list is Zara Young's death from Jurassic World. This was horrible. As I said before previously, it's not the death themselves that's a horrible experience. It's the fear and the suspense of when you're going to die and how leading up to it. And just take a look at what this woman had to go through before she died, not knowing which way was up. So this woman had to deal with a fear of the dinosaurs killing her, then flying high into the air in a fear of falling. One let her go. She thought she was going to fall and crash into the concrete below. Then another one grabbed her, thinking she was going to die, and crash into the floor below. And this happened several times. Then she makes it to the water. She falls thinking that, okay, she's going to die because she's going headfirst in this little shot right here. And it looks as though she's going to hit her head on one of the metal poles or something and just crush her skull open. Thankfully, she falls into the water. Before young girl can even break the surface, one of these things come under the water and grab her again. She has the breath knocked out from her, but now she can't escape these things, so she's in fear of drowning and being killed by these things at the same time. Not to mention that maybe at a split second that she got her bearings as to where she was, she realizes she's in the tank of the Mosasaurus. There's no way for her to fight this thing because the way she's being held and with how it's flailing her around, she can't get leverage to really hit it or do any injury to it. Can you blame her? She's freaking out and she's trying not to drown. The worst thing is she's the farthest away from everyone else. She is completely helpless and no one's gonna go in there to help her because everyone else is being hunted by these things. She can barely get her breath, and you can even hear it in this little clip here. Then she is swooped up by a beast, and she knows exactly what it is, but she can feel it. She can hear the roar coming from its mouth. She can feel the hot air of the breath being emitted from its maw, and she knows that this thing is going to kill her. Not only is something attacking her from the front, trying to pull her up in the air and kill her, but now this beast from the depths is now behind her, threatening to kill her. Now, what's the most terrifying thing is that she is squished by the Mosasaurus, but not completely. Because remember, the pterodactyl is also in its mouth. So the pterodactyl being in the Mosasaurus's mouth is somewhat keeping the jaws ajar, very slightly. It is your molars or your back teeth that are responsible for crushing things. So if you're holding something very thin like a pencil in your front teeth and trying to chew something in your molars, it's going to be impossible because just the little object that you have in the front is slightly keeping your jaws open in the back. What I'm trying to say is that Zara most likely was still alive while this was happening. as the mosasaurus clamped down on the pterodactyl. Not pterodactyl, but pteranodon. She did get injured by the teeth in this thing's mouth and the pressure that's bearing down on her, but at this moment she's probably just holding on to life. And even if she's still alive by the time she goes out in the water, she's gonna drown, run out of the air, or asphyxiate. This was the most terrifying. It wasn't the most gruesome in terms of gore, but it was the most terrifying death experience in all of the Jurassic Park movies. Well done, Jurassic World. Anyways, if you want to see all those clips or all the deaths in the Jurassic Park movies, up to the Jurassic World movie, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom excluded, then check out Riccardo Salambrini's channel. He actually uploaded the video of all the deaths in order. Link is in the description. Well, that was fun. Thanks so much for watching, guys. This has been Altiori. You ask, we answer.